Now, you want to speak about what a betting man will or won't do this weekend with the Falcons? Well, maybe it starts and stops with what you think about their new look defense. So many new additions that maybe, just maybe, despite the fact that people keep pointing to Desmond Ritter's small sample size and what will happen with Kyle Pitts, et cetera, the new look defense may actually be more of a wild card. Now, we talked about this yesterday. The good news is, Jarvis, we're not having the same conversation this season as we had ahead of last season, which
Right.
is true concerns, true worry on any side of the ball. But I'll use the term again loosely and put it in quotes. We still don't kind of know what's going to happen with David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett and whether or not it will or it won't work effectively in game. We're still waiting to see if the likes of Arnold Ebiketie will show us what we thought he could be, being drafted at the top of the second round. And there's still excitement around what the secondary will be able to do, but we're not sure yet. We'll know in the next 24 to 48 hours, but we're not sure yet what the final starting core of that DB will be for Sunday. That said, what are your biggest concerns, if you even have any, on the defensive side of the football?
I think I have to start in that secondary, right? Because that was one of the things that we said that could be the strength of this defense. And being a former defensive lineman, that kind of irks me a little bit. But hey, they made some nice additions, like you mentioned, David Onyemata, Calais Campbell, Arnold Ebiketie going into his second year, trying to make that second year elite. So there's some guys who are capable, but Dupree as well to throw his name in there. There's some guys who are capable of getting to the quarterback. But when you have an injury like a Jeff Okudah come, and we still don't quite know when he's gonna come back. ATL Day Ones has said that we could probably looking at about 3 to 4 weeks on a. Like we wouldn't be surprised if it ended up in that realm. Now you have Mike Hughes, and Mike Hughes didn't seem too confident. When he in the locker room when he was talking about him being ready for week 1. So
Indeed.
I think he may have spilled the beans a little bit. So we don't know if Mike Hughes is going to be there. So we're depending on Trey Flowers to get the job done. In place of Jeff Okudah, and that depth that you had coming into the season, you don't necessarily have. So I think. On the edge, outside on the edges specifically, not concerned about the back end of the DB room. That's solid. I think that's solid, and that's ready to roll with Jalen Hawkins. Oh man, drawing a blank. Jesse Bates and
Terrell, you're good to go.
AJ Terrell. So you have those things right there, but just that backside corner opposite AJ Terrell, like you mentioned, that's my biggest concern right now, especially when you brought in a guy like Mike Hughes to be able to fluctuate between that nickel and outside corner.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on that one. I think that I probably have the most concern because of injury.
Right.
Now, if you had asked me pre-injury, I probably would have said the corner or the DB room overall was the least of our worries, right? Or the least
Absolutely.
of the Falcons' worries, rather. Because, you looked at that lineup and you said, okay, like, we know AJ Terrell is ready. We know that Richie Grant he showed us what more than glimpses last season, right? First season, we saw glimpses. Second season, we saw, he's kind of coming up. And we're expecting some big things from him the third season. But when you start to kind of look down the depth chart and you're seeing, like you said, we don't know what's going to happen with Jeff Okudah. Mike Hughes sounded a little iffy. Cornell Armstrong is out on the IR. So it starts to make you think, okay, maybe that room doesn't quite have the depth that we thought it would have. And I think that we saw a few things that we wanted to see maybe. And I said, of course, David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett kind of tongue in cheek because they'll be just fine. They'll be just
no
fine.
Doubt, yeah. Just put them on the field. As long as they're healthy, they're good.
Exactly. One thing's for certain, too, and I know you'll agree with this, having played up front defensively, chemistry is not as important on the defensive side of the ball as it is on offense, right? So
Absolutely.
that's kind of tongue in cheek. It's more of like we just don't know how good / great they're going to be, but no, not a concern at all. But I do feel like you're onto something, and I would have to agree with you. That's probably the case until we hear more towards the end of the week about who actually is a go and who's not. So we'll be watching that. But speaking of who is and who is not a go, Carolina may have more issues than the Falcons do as it relates to who is and who's not going, because as we all have heard or most of us know, Brian Burns is a problem. Like Brian Burns is really a challenge for them. Now, granted, Injuries could certainly be an issue there as well because he's technically listed on their depth chart as questionable. But more importantly, he is holding out, and they truly don't know what's going to happen between now and Sunday. It seems like with reports coming out of Carolina, they don't really expect him to take the field. Now, don't get me wrong. You get it how you get it as far as advantage versus disadvantage. But I don't know, Jarvis. I'm kind of looking like advantage Falcons if Burns doesn't go.
Absolutely. You talking about a guy, he got 12 sacks last year, I believe, if I remember correctly.
And one of them against the Falcons, but 12 nonetheless.
Yeah, no doubt. So, those are some of the things that you have to think about, right? Because if we are really fine-tooth combing this offensive line as far as what their weaknesses may be, like that edge on that right side, when it's come time to pass that rock, get a little sketchy over there at 76, Indeed. So if Brian Burns isn't out there, like you have to say, hey, that's advantage Falcons. Absolutely. Yeah. And because, and I'm kind of going through some quotes from Frank Reich. They didn't see this coming. This is a surprise. Yep. They didn't see this coming at all. So Brian Burns is kind of basically pulled the cat out of the bag and be like, hey, I need to get paid. I was like, all right, that's a fine time to bring it up. Probably should have brought it up a little bit earlier. But I think that, it might be the opposite because when you think about going into week one, and then next thing hey, I ain't coming to practice no more. That might help the general manager say, you know what? Hey, Mr. Owner, we need to Scott Fitterer, I think is the GM up there. Yeah, I need to go ahead and you cut that check, sir.
Oh, definitely. They would want to because you know what?
Playing a little chess over there, up there in Carolina.
Indeed. And in the case of the Falcons, for example, when you have Matthew Bergeron, you went out and you got him knowing that he was in all likelihood going to be a starter. And I'm saying that because if you look at him from a rookie perspective, first of all, there are a lot of shades of him that don't look like a rookie. Let's just start right there. And secondly, you got him because you knew you needed a starter. The end. When the Panthers went after DJ Johnson, I don't think they really said, hey, he's ready to start if Brian Burns can't go. But that's what they're looking at, the possibility of a third round rookie starting for them at the will position. So we shall.
That's like Zach Harrison coming in. Like, he could probably say, hey, potentially be something. Just like,
I mean, I can, right. Exactly. And who knows? I mean, we don't know if DJ Johnson has had the kind of tutelage under Brian Burns or that linebacker core that Zach Harrison has had the good privilege of under Calais Campbell. Who knows? But that's going to be interesting to kind of see because at the end of the day, that could also impact, especially in game, kind of what the Falcons decide to run. Because again, we know what across that line they are capable of as far as their run protection. But like you said, let's see if this has any impact on potentially a positive in the direction of the Falcons for pass protection. But let us know. Do you have any concerns on the defensive side of the ball? Maybe even outside of the DB room for the Falcons? Let us know.
Oh, can I add this to you? I'm sorry. I forgot something. It just, Mr. Brown is coming, Drew. So I need you to be ready, sir. Because a defense tackle / nose guard getting 12 double-digit tackles is unacceptable. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know how good he is, but, but you at least keep a body on him.
Exactly. And you have to be prepared for them moving him around as well because they have no problem moving him around for him to do whatever it is that they need to be done. Yep, exactly. Yeah. Get to work. Get ready. Because Derek Brown, he always comes understanding the assignment. But do you guys think the same? Like, despite the fact that Brian Burns may not be available for the Panthers, are we still looking at Derek Brown as someone who gives you guys pause and concern? Let us know. Just like we want to hear from you guys. If you have a concern on the defensive side of the ball for the Falcons, everydayers, you know what to do. You drop comments all the time on YouTube. We appreciate you for putting that in the chat. And also thank you guys for always downloading ATL Day Ones wherever you get your podcasts.